Welcome in, everybody. This is the Views from the 573 Draft Day 2 recap show. I am Ryan McDaniel, joined by Matt Mormann. Matt, how are you
Hello.
doing on this night 2 of the draft?
I'm doing pretty good. The draft is always very fun. It's one of my favorite weekends of the calendar. It's the best sporting event that isn't a game in the entire world. So it's always really fun. Trey Benson just got picked. Sorry, Ryan. This might happen a few times where I look up and go, "Oh!" Trey Benson's gonna pick by Arizona. But we're gonna talk. We're gonna do what? Some round one recap. Round two just wrapped up. And we'll kind of talk about round three as it on goes here.
So round 2 has just happened. I think we'll just leave it to round 2 and round 3 tonight and just kind of
Okay.
we might do after everything is done, we might just go back and take a look at the whole thing and include some round 1 talk because there's some big surprises and there's some big surprises here in round 2 as we get started off that. So if you guys want to check out the recap of round 1, you can find that on YouTube or your podcasting preference. If you prefer audio or video, we have both for you set up there. So be sure to go check those out, and we'll have a video and podcast for this one as well. That'll be up sometime Saturday. So be on the lookout for those two. So let's talk about round 2 of the draft. And it started off with, as we got the ticker here going at the bottom, Keon Coleman going to Buffalo. It felt like a Buffalo pick was bound to be wide receiver there at the top. It just was a matter of who and what was their preference. And they go with Keon Coleman, who is a big guy, and good route runner, is a guy that's going to catch a lot of 50-50 balls. Matt, as far as Coleman going to the Bills, how are you feeling about that pick?
Yeah, Keon Coleman is like the most polarizing wide receiver in my own mind. He's a guy who I flip on constantly. He's a guy who I like a lot of physical tools quite a bit. And then all of a sudden he runs a really slow 40. And then I watch him run the gauntlet and I'm super impressed. He has the fastest time in the gauntlet. And then I watch some more tape where I feel like he doesn't use his big frame very well. And then I watch another video where he runs over a defender. So I don't really know what to think of Keon Coleman as a player. Obviously the opportunity will be there in Buffalo, right? That depth chart is what? Curtis Samuel and Khalil Shakir, right? At wide receiver right now. So the offense kind of run through him a little bit as far as wide receivers at least go. I tell you, Ryan, I really thought that trade was that pick was going to get traded at some point today. I'd kind of been keeping an eye on Twitter all day, thinking that 33 was going to get shipped, probably to San Francisco for one of their wide receivers. It sounds like that didn't happen. It sounds like it won't happen at this point now. So yeah, I definitely think wide receiver was kind of the obvious fill the need for them. Coleman wasn't my favorite wide receiver on the board at the time. It was A.D. Mitchell or Troy Franklin. We're here in the third round. Troy Franklin is still on the board. So what do I know? I'm sorry. Ladd McConkey was still on the board also. Ladd was my number one wide receiver out of those guys. So there were wide receivers I preferred, but I do like Keon Coleman as a player.
Yeah, I mean, I think the obvious thing here for Coleman is that he's not a big speed threat. I mean, you got Samuel and you got Shakir for that, but yeah, he's gonna get some big time targets there in that offense. And it felt like during the season, it felt like Keon was kind of like in that wide receiver 4 range. Yeah, at least that's kind of how it felt like with the season at Florida State. And here he is in round 2 at the top of it. He's wide receiver 6, 7, something like that.
Right?
8. Uh, he's in that bottom half right there. So a little bit of a drop off for him, but yeah, he's going to get opportunities in Buffalo. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if the Bills took another receiver a little bit later on in this draft. But Coleman, they had to go somewhere. I'm with you. I probably would have taken somebody like McConkey, or I would have taken your guy Troy, or I would have even traded the pick and maybe see if I can get one of those guys a little bit later on. Just accumulate more picks, build up that roster.
Yeah, because I do like what they did in night 1, where they did keep on trading back and trading back and trading back. They've got a lot of holes to fill in this roster for sure. A lot of their defense kind of aged out. It's why I was actually kind of low on the Bills going into last year, is because they kind of did get older on defense pretty quickly. So and a lot of those guys are now just off the roster entirely. So a lot of holes to fill, and those later picks will help out with that a little bit.
Yeah. So moving on, let's talk about number 34, and that is one of your guys, Lad
Yeah.
McConkey, going here to the Chargers. Chargers trading up, and I said in the group chat, I felt like, man, it's got to be a Michigan man. It felt like either it's Junior Colston, Mike Sanders still, or Chris Jenkins. It's got to be, but no, the Chargers go with your guy Lad McConkey here at number 34.
Yeah, lad's awesome. He kind of gets put into a bucket, I think, of being less athletic than he actually is. That's one of the things I really loved about him was at the combine, and not that the combine is everything, but he really impressed me a lot with the athleticism numbers when I didn't think that was part of his game so much. He's a guy who just always finds a way to be open and catches everything. In pretty much all those Georgia games I was able to kind of take a little bit of a look at over the last few months. He's awesome, and he can be their true number one wide receiver. It'll be nice that there is at least like a Josh Palmer there, and it's going to be kind of a run heavy offense, I think. And you have Justin Herbert, of course, who's going to make those catchable balls for him. I think that he's definitely a guy where like year one, he can have some good production, not saying that he's going to go for 1,200 yards or anything like that in year one, but I think 900 is definitely kind of a range he can live in. And, with Herbert at the quarterback, hopefully the offense can keep on moving. He can catch a few touchdowns and make himself a little bit relevant for us. As far as the Chargers as a team kind of goes, they went tackle with their first round pick and then receiver in round 2. Ryan, I know we talked preseason, pre-draft podcast. That was kind of what I think I thought would be the case, made sense for them. I think I allowed myself to buy into the neighbors idea more and more for the Chargers as we got closer and closer. But no, this doesn't surprise me at all. This is the way that Harbaugh went. He's talked after the round 1 how offensive tackles are weapons, and I think he truly believes that. And I mean, look at his brother. I legitimately, honest to goodness, can say that once Lamar took over at quarterback, Marshall Yanda became a weapon in that offense. Very special circumstance there, though. But it was under a Greg Roman offense. And so, I've seen a Harbaugh coached team have an offensive lineman be a premier featured player in an offense before. So I wouldn't put it past me with Joe Alt. But from McConkey here, though, it definitely brings some much needed talent to that receiving core.
Yeah, and Herbert is automatically the best quarterback that McConkey has ever played with, considering who his quarterbacks were at Georgia. And, I think we had mentioned this in the pre-draft process about he was a guy that surprisingly had a lot of his snaps, a high percentage of them were on the outside. And so that kind of shows like, hey, he's not just a guy that's using the slot, but can play on the outside if you want him to. And maybe you can shift maybe somebody like Palmer into that slot. So there's a little bit of versatility there with Lad. And yeah, I feel like he kind of fits with what Harbaugh would want in a wide receiver. And McConkey, he played at Georgia, so he knows what a physical run team looks like. And so it's not going to be any different for him. So it felt like, this felt like a Jim Harbaugh pick, getting Lad McConkey at 35, at number 34. Speaking of number 35, Atlanta trading up, a lot of trades up here to start off, and they go with Rook or Rororo, and talk about one of the most fun names to say in this draft.
Most difficult names to say.
Yeah. I felt like a little bit of a reach here for me. It feels like, he could have gone a little bit later on, and this kind of started the run on defensive tackles because once Rook went, they just came flying off the board. And we'll get to them a little bit later, but I can see why a certain team I like went with the guy they went. But Rook out of Clemson, listen, they need some help on that defense. I felt like they could have gone with the edge rusher, and it felt like that could have been the pick. Maybe Marshall Nealon here, but instead they get a defensive tackle that, if he can put it all together, great, but I just don't know if he can. I'm taking a look at some of the draft stuff that I have pulled up, and Dane Brugler pulling his stuff up. He's got him as his number 4 guy, but has a second or third round projection. So still probably would have gone a second, but probably a little bit earlier than I think a lot of people thought he would.
Yeah, admittedly, I don't know really anything about this player. Most of my draft goes too deep, and I didn't see any of his. I didn't see his name come up like at all in round two. I don't think. So I don't know really much about him. I do know as far as the Atlanta Falcons go, though, they've got a really old defensive line, right? You have Eddie Jackson, David Onyemata, Grady Jarrett, Calais was there last year, right? Calais
Yeah.
Campbell. So an aged defensive line. I think it's why a lot of us had them taking Dallas Turner or Jared Verse, either or, in round one, and they go ahead and do Penix in round one instead. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense for them to go that way in round two and add some youth to that defensive line.
So speaking of defensive line, let's stick here with the Washington Commanders taking Jerzan Johnny Newton out of Illinois. And this is a guy that is a great pass rusher as a defensive tackle. And I'll tell you what, Washington just keeps on loading up on just like guys up front that can get after the quarterback. It's like, you know what? We're just going to hoard all these guys to ourselves. We're not going to let any of you other teams have them. We're just going to keep them, and we're just going to rotate them in constantly and just cause chaos for all these teams in the NFC East. So I feel like this was honestly a good pick. Uh, a guy that could have gone in the first round. I believe I read he had like a Jones fracture here with his foot, so that's something to be concerned about. But I think for him, he's not going to play right away. He's going to rotate in, and so for him, that's a great situation. And for Dan Quinn, you get another piece for that defense to just cause havoc.
And Dan Quinn, he's a guy who likes to rotate that defensive line quite a bit. That was a real hallmark with the Seahawks. Everyone paid a lot of attention to the LOB, corners and secondary. The defensive line, they didn't really have any names except for Bennett at the time, but it was a lot of rotational pieces there, right? A lot of guys who
Yeah.
kind of in and out. I will say, just a quick look at their contracts. Deron Payne, he's pretty well locked in still. But Jonathan Allen, he's a guy they can move on from pretty easily a year from now. At that point, he'll be 32, or 30 as well, I guess I should say. So definitely you can see kind of a bit of influx some youth into that defensive line as well, because Jonathan Allen, he's been a stalwart. He's been really, really, really good for them for,
Yes, absolutely.
6, 7, 8 years now. He's been really great. But, at some point, you do need to cycle through. So adding a guy who I'm with you. I thought there was a really good chance we're going to see him in round one last night, and it never happened. So to get him in round two, really, really good, a good value, I think, for Washington. And, it's one of those things where it's not really a need, but a round one quality player in round two, I'll take it all day.
Yeah, you'll absolutely take that if you get that at the top of round two all day, every day. And if you're Washington, you got the picks to go and take a guy like that. You got all these picks in the top 100. Why not go and grab a guy that fell into the second at the top? So at number 37, we got the Patriots taking Jalen Polk. Honestly, kind of surprised they didn't take somebody like 80 or somebody like Troy, but instead they go with Polk, the receiver out of Washington, probably a little bit earlier than I think a lot of people thought. Had a great season at Washington last year, caught well over 1,100 yards and 9 touchdowns, and was a really great weapon for Penix, along with Rome and then Jalen McMillan, who came back a little bit later. But he was really the number two of that Washington offense. So, as far as a weapon for Drake May, how are you feeling about this?
Yeah, so I was really happy to see them take somebody in round two. And I thought Polk, I had him as more of a round three kind of guy, but I can see an argument where he sneak into round two. That's a little bit early for me in round two, but I think that he's a really, really good number two option receiver on a team now that doesn't really have a number one though. So it'll be interesting to see how they kind of mix and match with Douglas and with the guy who came over from San Francisco like 3 years ago, Kendrick Bourne, and then also Jalen Polk. Look, I think he's kind of a guy who can take the top off a little bit too for you. It's good they're at least getting somebody in there for May, right? Like it didn't have to. I mean, whoever it was going to be wasn't going to be a receiver I was going to love at that point in the draft.
Yeah.
But at least they did something for him though.
Yeah, it felt like this pick all the way was either tackle or receiver. You had to go and get your guys some help with with somebody there to help out your future with your quarterback of the future right there. And, either way, it was going to help him out, get him some protection or give him a guy that he can go and throw it to. So it's a good start. Polk is, like you said, a guy I probably thought would have gone a little bit later. Maybe it seemed in the back end of round two. But, here he goes to New England at number 37 to give the Patriots and Drake May a weapon to play with. So now let's talk about the Titans at number 38. I went on here pre-show and I felt like I was less than thrilled about this pick. And just kind of reading in all the stuff afterwards, I'm probably even less thrilled about it, considering I've read that they had potential offers on the table to move back. And of course, a pick later, we had the Rams trade up to 39 with Carolina. And I find it hard to believe there was not any of those picks that did not, or any of those trades rather, that did not have a third round pick included. In which, if you're the Titans, you don't have a third round pick, it would have made a lot of sense to go trade back some and go and get an extra pick that you don't have. So they stick here at number 38, and there's some good players on the board here. Guys, I was like, okay, you got Cooper here, you got AD, you got Troy Franklin, Kool-Aid. I had talked myself into Cooper, maybe move him at safety and say, like, let's roll with that, boost the secondary up even more. They go to Devondre Sweat here, the defense tackle out of Texas. And it feels like he's more of a nose tackle that's going to eat up some space. They're talking about him as a 3-down guy, but I feel like he's got a little bit of weight issue that he needs some conditioning and is a 2-down player. The great thing, though, is he is next to Jeffrey Simmons. That is the great thing. He's going to be beside him, and he's going to help Simmons on that front line and take away some guys where Simmons can go one-on-one. But, just considering that, his conditioning, he also had that DUI a couple weeks ago. There's also been some partying stuff that's been brought up with him. I just don't know. It felt like a very Mike Vrabel, John Robinson type of Titans pick here. Same old Titans. I'm just really unsure about it, but I can see some reasoning behind it. It helps out Simmons. It helps out Kenneth Murray, who, if you want Murray to attack the offense, that you got a big space eater up front where he can just go and attack. So I'm really soured on this pick. I really felt like they could have traded down and got him a little bit later on, to be honest.
Yeah, and he's a run stopper in kind of the purest sense of the word, right? Like, that is what he is. ESPN player confirmed was Jordan Davis from a year ago. But Davis, I feel like, much more athletic and play on passing downs a little bit more. Whereas he's kind of just a pure run stopping defensive tackle. I don't think that's really a style of player to focus on when you are kind of in the Titans position right now. That's kind of wanted to be in more on when you are a team who is definitely going to be leading in a lot of games and going to be, I don't know. I just don't really feel like that's a spot to be that worried about. Now you are in the same division as Jonathan Taylor, so maybe there is some merit to it in that regard, but not so much to me.
Sure.
No, I definitely would have preferred to see a couple other things definitely for Tennessee. I don't love the player. I'm with you.
I've kind of, softened up on Latham, and I really do like it a little bit more than I did this time last night. And so there's that. This one, I just don't know if I can see myself at this point Saturday night. Really kind of see myself talking myself into him at number 38. So we'll see what they do. I feel like they could have traded back, got more picks. They needed more picks, with a lot of capital they traded. I feel like I had to look up what pick we're on, but I feel like around this pick, the Titans could have been making their pick, but they used that pick to go up and get Will Levis last year. So,
well, in the Rams,
that's what you get for trying to get your future quarterback right there.
Yeah, which is much cheaper than what most teams give up to try to get their future quarterback. But the Rams trade, I loved it I think it was Carolina who traded down in that situation where the Rams actually gave up a second round pick next year to do a plus a fourth rounder to do a pick swap this year in the round 2. So I mean, even if you're not picking around 3, so what if I get 2 2s next year? I would happily have done that.
Oh yeah, 100%. So let's talk about that Rams pick, and let's talk about Braden Fisk here, teaming back up with Jared Verse here, and that's fun here. With Jared Verse and Braden Fisk both playing with each other at Florida State, and they both wreaked havoc together. And the Rams probably took a look at that. It's like, let's not disrupt that. That looks like a lot of fun. Let's keep that continuing here at the NFL level. And listen, they needed somebody, nobody can replace Aaron Donald at all. But you needed to get some guys that can create some havoc up front. And I feel like Fisk and Verse are two guys that are able to do that. Fisk is a guy that really rose up draft boards, and he's another guy like Verse that came from the portal and just stood out this year at Florida State and was causing a lot of havoc for a lot of teams, especially later on. It felt like he was getting to the quarterback more so than Verse was.
Yeah, he's a little undersized, I think, for an interior guy, but that's okay because he gets to the quarterback, right? Like that's kind of almost in today's NFL, that's a trade-off I'm happy to make, where interior pressure is becoming more and more important to these defenses. And obviously that's a huge part of the Rams defense the last 10 years. And so I'm totally cool with it. Also just throwing numbers at it, right? Like you lost arguably the best defensive lineman ever for the last 20 years, right? Like, so I'm totally cool with the idea of, hey, let's just throw numbers at it, right? Let's take both Jared Verse and let's take Fisk here. And let's just hope these guys can maybe two guys can equal 80% of Aaron Donald.
And you would have quantity there to Byron Young, who they took last year. So yeah, just trying to create that pressure by the quantity of players that you have. I mean, nobody's going to be able to replace Aaron Donald, but if you can get some percentage of that production here, I mean, that's great. So let's talk about the Philadelphia Eagles here trading up to number 40 and taking Cooper DeJean. And I'll tell you what, Matt, we talked about the Eagles and them needing to retool their secondary. Man, oh man, have they done that here within their first two picks and getting Quinyon Mitchell and then getting Cooper here at 40.
Yep, for sure. It was exactly what they needed to kind of do, and they knew that from a need standpoint. And look, it's gosh, I feel like it's every year now where the Eagles take these defensive players who we are like they should have gone 20 picks ago, and they always end up with the Eagles, right? So they definitely get an A+ from me once again. And yeah, this secondary desperately needed an influx of youth, and they did that in one night or two nights, I guess.
Yeah, and Cooper's a versatile guy where he can play any position in that secondary, and also he can be a return specialist if you need one. So to have that type of guy that is versatile, and he's also a playmaker on that back end. He had a lot of pick sixes in the last couple of years for Iowa. So you get a playmaker back there. And so if you're Philly, you feel great. You know what you have with Slay and Bradbury getting up there. You did draft Ringo and Ricks last year, but now you add these two guys to retool that secondary. Hey, I'm sure Howie Roseman is really pleased with getting these two guys and getting Cooper, in which he's just like, oh yeah, this guy fell into my lap. Sure, I get to take him. So, uh, yeah. So Howie Roseman gets his man there at 40. Another guy that fell into the first round is Kool-Aid McKinstry. He goes to New Orleans here at number 41. And I know, man, we talked about in our one of our last mock drafts where we talked about the potential need for a corner for Kinstry, who it feels like he was a guy that was at the top of the boards as far as cornerbacks was concerned, but now he finds himself here in the second round going to New Orleans. But he's going to team up with Marshawn Lattimore, so he's got to be like, okay, there's a little bit of a trade off here.
Yeah, for sure. You get to come in as the two. You get to kind of find your place in this league a little bit, not immediately dropping yourself in there going against the number ones. But No, as long as his injury heals up and he's good to go, he's a really, really good player. I actually thought the Ravens felt like the kind of spot for that, right? After a couple of years of like Ojabo and stuff like that. I really thought the Ravens kind of felt like a
Yeah.
Kool-Aid landing spot, if you will. No, I like that pick a lot for New Orleans, just a crew talent, you know.
Oh yeah, I do too. I feel like that's going to be a good coach by Saban. So they know what they're getting into there with Kool Aid, and he gets to stay not too far away from Tuscaloosa. So Kool Aid falling all the way to 41. And honestly, we had a little bit of a run here with the corners here, going four straight picks in Kamari Lasser going from Georgia to Houston. And it felt like they needed some cornerback help, and that's what they're going to be getting in Lassiter and helping out that defense. In which D'Amico Ryans is like, "Hey, I'm a defensive guy. I need some help back here. I need somebody to pair alongside Derek Stingley," and that's what they're going to get here. I think in Kamari Lassiter. Now the 40 time is a little bit boring, not the fastest, but I feel like it's really well. I really remember not hearing his name called upon and being picked on by these receivers in the SEC level, which that should tell you something because we know how deep the SEC is. So Kamari here going to Houston, good pick for them and getting him to go to Houston. And D'Amico, I think he's going to really love him pairing him with Stingley really early on.
Yeah, he's these next two corners both. I don't know a whole lot about either of them, but I do know what I saw on the football field from Houston last year, right? And definitely they could use a guy opposite of Stingley for sure. And that's a division that's getting deeper and deeper at receiver. And so yeah, I don't mind that one bit from a need standpoint.
Next one up, let's talk about the Arizona Cardinals here. They need some cornerback help too. And that's what they go here at 43. Max Melton felt like he's a guy that really tested really well, had a lot of speed, has a lot of press man coverage abilities. And for Jonathan Gannon, I think you see what you built at Arizona. You take Darius Robinson in round one, really versatile defender, and then you get Melton here to who really impressed at the Senior Bowl. You get him as a corner here and listen, we've seen Rutgers secondary players have some success in the NFL. Look at the McCourty brothers. Look at Teron Harmon. Those guys have had success at the NFL level. And if there's one thing Shiano knows how to do, and that is to coach defensive players, particularly defensive backs, and putting them in the league. So I feel like Gannon probably is like, okay, I recognize that. Let's go and take this guy from Rutgers. He has a pretty good chance, I think, in maybe succeeding at this next level, considering what Shiano does with those defenders he puts into the league.
Yeah, and this is definitely another team where I mean I feel like this is just a trend because of how good receivers are playing these days. But look around the NFC West. You've got a Lockett and a Metcalf. You've got a Debo and an Ayuk. And oh, by the way, those two teams have spent a first round pick in each of the last two drafts now on wide receivers as well. And then you've also got Puka Nakua with the Cooper Cup, right? So that's another one. We're just looking around this division, you need corners, right? That's just looking around the NFL now, right? Like everyone needs more and more corners as more and more receivers are being on the field. So it's one of those things where if you thought you had two good ones, you probably actually need a third. And if you don't think you have two good ones, you definitely need a second one.
For sure. Yeah, I feel like this big need for Arizona. It's something they needed to help cover Puka and Cooper for the Rams with Seattle and the weapons they've got. And now, at least he won't have to face Marvin Harrison Jr. You know, he might have to face him in practice, but, hey, that's good. That's going to be good practice for him, Um, now let's talk about the Raiders here. And I gotta tell you, I feel like the Raiders have had a good couple of picks here to start off their draft
Yeah.
in taking Jackson Powers Johnson, the center from Oregon. And listen, it felt like the Raiders they were due for an offensive line pick, maybe at right tackle, but they go with the center, one of the best centers in this draft. He's the second center off the board, and he's going there and I feels like it fits what Antonio Pierce wants out of a center for his offense. Big, physical, brawling type of guy that's going to push people around and make sure whoever's there at quarterback, whether it's O'Connell or whether it's Gardner Minshew, he's going to get them right and he's going to be well protected. And if it doesn't work out at center, he can go and play some guard too. He's versatile enough to do that too. So I feel like this is a good pick from the Raiders. It kind of fits the mold of what Pierce has them wanting to do.
Yeah, the Raiders really feel like they're maybe just a quarterback away from being a pretty good team at this point. We'll see what they get out of Gardner Minshew. That can go one of two ways for sure. But I'm with you.
Yeah.
Jackson Powers Johnson, Jackson Powers Johnson. I think he was maybe a fringe round 1 guy. To see him kind of fall into pick 12 here round 2, I thought we'd see him a little bit earlier. Not gonna lie, here in round 2. No, this offensive line, look, it's been a work in progress. They're progressing. The defensive line is really, really good. They've built the trenches on the defensive side of the ball for sure. You added Brock Bowers yesterday you added Jacoby Myers in free agency last year. Devontae Adams is there. Like, this is actually a pretty decently good team that just has a quarterback problem.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's a big question mark. They've built that defense really well. They could maybe use a corner to help them out here. They still got the third round pick. Maybe they can go address that here pretty soon. But yeah, it does feel like they are a quarterback away from just being a team to like watch out for them because they got the guys on offense. You got Devontae, you got Jacoby Myers, you got Bowers to pair with Michael Mayer. Offensive line is looking solid now that you added Powers Johnson on the interior. And we know about that defense, that defensive line, they've stacked that up over the last couple years. It does feel like they're a quarterback away. Maybe there's somebody that would have liked to trade for a quarterback in this draft, but I feel like with the way that it has gone, if you're the Raiders, you're really pleased with how this draft went. You love that the two guys you got kind of fit with what Antonio Pierce wants them to do, and you get a weapon in Brock that you can just move them all over the place. So the Raiders here, I think they're killing the draft so far. In their first 2 picks, they're really doing a good job here.
Yep, I totally agree. I thought the Bowers pick yesterday was really, really good. Despite already having Michael Mayer, I said on the ADP, don't let Michael Mayer stop you from taking a Brock Bowers, and I'm glad they didn't.
Yeah, true. So now at 45, we got the Green Bay Packers, and they take Edgerrin Cooper, the first linebacker off the board, a guy that felt like he could have gone a little bit sooner, but the Packers, they get him at number 45. They give Quay Walker a running mate, in which it felt like the Packers, they got a lot of young talent on that offensive side of the ball that they've drafted. They address it here with getting some defensive talent, some young defensive talent on that side. And Cooper feels like he's a guy that is he's an attacking linebacker that feels like if you don't watch out, he can go and get after the quarterback. He can stop the run. He can cover a little bit. And for the Packers, I feel like for their front 7 and what you look at the Lions, you look at the Vikings, and you look at the Bears, you gotta need a linebacker to help cover some of these guys. So I feel like this is a good pick, good value here for the Packers. And even though it's a linebacker, it feels like a Packers pick to take a linebacker here in round 2.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, he's kind of an attacking linebacker. The Matt Miller's comparison was Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, and that's exactly who I saw in him as well, as kind of a guy who can rush quarterback a little bit from the middle of the defense, a guy who can drop back and make a play, good in coverage. I think he might be a hair bit undersized at 230, but that's what middle linebackers are now. They're not 250, they're 230 now because what used to be a strong safety is now a middle linebacker, right? That's the kind of the game we play now. So, no, I think full steam ahead. I'm cool with it.
Yeah. Next pick, first running back off the board, a little bit sooner than what I thought here. Carolina going with Jonathan Brooks here at number 46. And I'll be honest, I thought they would take a running back a little bit later and maybe go somebody, get an edge player or get a corner or get maybe like Zach Frazier, who fell all the way in the 50s. But they nabbed Brooks here. How are you feeling about that? For as fantasy wise, how are you feeling about that with Brooks going to Carolina?
Well, I think that I'm gonna feel a lot about it like how I felt about Todd Gurley way back in the day. And admittedly, I missed out on Gurley his rookie year because of it, right? Like a running back coming off of a torn ACL on a bad offense where you've got a nice, decent little player already baked in there with Chuba Hubbard. Um, I'm not gonna ever really be all that into that guy, right? Like I'm just not for year one, but I'm really excited about what he is as a player, right? Like assuming, and by the way, him getting this draft capital tells me the knee is gonna be good to go. It may not be week one,
Yeah.
but like there's no major constructional like issues there. There's nothing they're too worried about. So that's great to me for Jonathan Brooks. See him be the first running back off the board in kind of a middle round 2 spot. Full steam ahead. We're good to go there. As far as kind of the fit with Carolina goes, I know you mentioned some defenders there. If I'm Carolina right now, I am all in on what they just did with this draft. Screw defense. This is not the time to be defense, right? We talk about these teams with kind of the rookie contract and this is your chance to really build up and build a good defense and get weapons and do all these things when you have a rookie contract. Right now for Carolina, it's panic mode. It is no, we need to spend every resource we have in making sure that rookie quarterback is our rookie quarterback because we gave up too much to go get him from to not be the answer. And by the way, they have their own pick back next year. So if he's not the answer, they'd probably move on a year from now, right? So no, I am all in on the fact that I don't love the running back from a big picture value standpoint here, right? I'm never really all that into the running backs. I'm one of those guys. But I am into the idea of surrounding your quarterback when you are panicking on him like this with Deontay Johnson. They added Xavier Legette, who I don't love, but if they did, okay, fair play. I prefer A.D. Mitchell. I prefer Troy Franklin, who still hasn't been picked here. It's pick 78, so what do I know, right? I prefer Ladd McConkey, but Legette was their guy, though. So go get your guy at wide receiver. Go get him Deontay Johnson. Now you went and got him a running back. Like I'm all for what they did here. I think yes, you probably spent more resources than you needed to do it, but you needed to do it. So I'm cool with it.
Yeah. Yeah, you needed to do it, and I'm with you there. You need to help your young quarterback, and like you said, they can go and take one next year. If they feel like if they're in that position, and they're able to do that, and well, maybe they don't make a trade that somehow gives another team the number one pick. So yeah, Jonathan Brooks going there to the Carolina Panthers there at number 46. Let's talk about the not Minnesota, New York Giants here going and taking Tyler Nubin, the safety out of Minnesota. And it feels like he's a guy that does everything well. There's no really big trait that he's really great in. But as far as the Giants, they did lose Xavier McKinney in the offseason. You do have a little bit of a need there at safety. So why not go and get a guy in Nubin who can really do everything well, can go in that back end of the Giants defense and be a sound guy that can really contribute in year one and really help out your defense.
Yeah, for sure. He's another guy who maybe a fringe round 1, round 2 kind of guy that went down a little bit, and there were a lot of drafts where I saw him going earlier in round 2 than he did. So totally fills a need. Again, not a player I know a whole lot about personally, so I'm kind of going off of need here and consensus big boards and stuff like that. But no, thumbs up from me all around on that one.
Yeah, I mean, need some secondary help, and being able to cover those receivers in Philly and, being able to cover CD Lamb and help out there. You're going to need that in the NFC East. So there's the Giants there at number 47. Let's go and move to number 48, in which we had, and 48, 49, in which we had two defensive tackles go off the board. Jacksonville taking Mason Smith out of LSU. Mason Smith, I feel like, is a guy that could have gone a little bit higher had he not gotten hurt last year. I should say in 2022. If that didn't happen, he could have really built a stock up. He might have been a guy that could have gone in round one this year, but he gets hurt in 2022, torn ACL. but has a solid year, comes back, and he's here taken here in the top 50 picks here by Jacksonville. And they go out and they sign Eric Armstead, and they go and grab him, and they get Mason Smith, a big defensive tackle, and can just rotate him in and not have to worry about him contributing big time snaps right away. Just rotate him in there with that group of defensive tackles. And he's got excellent potential for defensive tackle. If he can put it all together, Jaguars might have gotten themselves a really big steal here at number 48.
Yeah, and I don't mind taking chances on upside when you're kind of in the middle of round 2 like this, right? Like, it's a guy who, had he not gotten hurt a couple years ago, really showed a whole lot of potential. I think, Ryan, you can vouch for this. You know better than I do. If he doesn't get hurt, he probably goes mid-first round, right? Like, maybe later first round, but still,
Yeah,
major
I
upside,
think
major
so.
potential there. And so to take a risk on a guy like that in round 2, look, if it doesn't hit, doesn't hit. Round 2 picks are dicey to begin with, right? Like, round 1 picks are dicey, right? So round 2, I don't mind taking a shot on that upside, though. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But if it does work, then you may have just had a real game changer and difference maker that usually isn't available this time in the draft. Just moving right ahead, because you mentioned the next pick earlier with Jenkins going to Cincinnati with the next pick. A safer pick, probably a currently better player, but the upside's not quite there as much as it is for Smith.
Yeah. So let's talk about that Chris Jenkins pick going to Cincinnati. One of the Michigan men going here, the son of Chris Jenkins from several seasons ago that was with the Jets. And, it feels like there's a lot of sons of former players here, and he's one of them. And here he goes to Cincinnati. And he's a winner. He played on a national title team with Michigan last year. He's a little bit. I feel like I saw that he's about 6'2", 6'3", is around 300 pounds. So maybe not quite the size you want for the defensive tackle, but he's got the NFL bloodlines. You know that he played for a winner, contributed a big part to that excellent defense at Michigan. So for Cincinnati, listen, you might need a receiver, but I think you capitalize on that depth here and maybe take somebody here a little bit later on. But you take Jenkins here. I think they get a winner here at number 49.
I did not realize that Chris Jenkins was his dad. That's fun. Yeah, I remember him really well. He was one of my early video game loves, not gonna lie. Chris Jenkins. Yeah, back when he was in Carolina. I used to make him be my defensive tackle quite a bit because I remember, for whatever reason, he was a player who was easy to trade for to put on the Ravens and plug him into that defensive line because, those mid-2000 Ravens, they needed more defensive line help, right? Like, it was just
Sure.
it was very fun to have 4 guys who just bowl over the offensive line on every play when you're 12 years old. But no, getting back to current Chris Jenkins over here. Yeah, I actually, man, you know what? Now that you mention that, I see it. I can see why his dad. Well, I can see why his dad is his dad, right? Like, I can see kind of that pass rushing ability. Chris Jenkins was really good before the injuries. Injuries really kind of zapped it away from him. Hopefully, that doesn't happen to his kid here because, yeah, it's what I mentioned earlier with the Rams pick. How interior pass rush is so much more prevalent now than ever before, right? Back when Chris Jenkins, his dad, played, I guess Chris Jenkins Sr., I guess it would be, played defensive tackles, you were a run stopper. And that was really it. Like, there was the very rare and occasional Warren Sapp, and that's like the only one. Sorry, TJ Houshmandzadeh just came up on the screen. I get distracted when I see a guy when I see that guy for sure. Freaking Hoosh. Okay. Chris Jenkins, my goodness, I'm living right now in 2007 talking about Chris Jenkins and seeing TJ Houshmandzadeh, Ryan. This is my life right
man.
now. But no, back when he played, it was defensive tackles were all about stopping the run. That was their whole job. This is the new era of defensive tackles, though. It's about getting to the quarterback from the inside, disrupting that pocket from the middle. And if you can kind of, then also contain on the edge, you've got them, right? So I love it quite a bit, actually.
Yeah, and if you're going to get after these young quarterbacks, what's a good way to get after them? That interior pressure. So I feel like that's something Cincinnati is looking at here at number 49. Number 50, another Michigan man in Washington, taking Mike Sanders from Michigan. Uh, this guy was a wide receiver when he came to Michigan. Then he switched over to the defensive side, became an all-star nickelback for Michigan, and just was a guy that was all over the field, was a playmaker for this Michigan team. It just had incredible instincts, intangibles off the charts, and was a big time piece to that Michigan defense as well. And I feel like this is a guy for Washington that's good for them. If you want to rebuild that culture, I think Sanders still is a good guy to start building that on. And, Dan Quinn getting another guy here, I think that's going to be able to contribute here pretty early on that defense and just be able to go out and try to make plays, whether it's in slot, maybe they give him some snaps outside. But he's going to make his impact known on day one, I think, for Washington.
It did just surprise me though to see his size. Like he's probably the smallest corner to ever play for Dan Quinn, right? He's a guy who traditionally just likes bigger corners. So that'll be something to watch there. But yeah, other than that, I don't know a whole lot about the kid. Washington definitely needs some corners though. It seems like he can kind of play a little bit inside, play a little bit outside. So that's always good to have versatility too.
Yeah, big time. So now let's go and let's talk about the Steelers. And they did not take, to our chagrin, they did not take a kicker or a long snapper with this pick either. So that's unfortunate. But I think they knocked this pick out of the park here. Zach Frazier falling all the way down to him. They take Fatanu in round one, who offers some versatility as a tackle or a guard. Now you get Frazier as a center from West Virginia, and he fits the profile, I think, of the Steelers and what they want to do. And he feels like a Steelers interior offensive lineman. He really does. He screams physical. He's got a wrestling background. So it makes sense for him to be a Steelers pick here. He made 46 starts at college too. So I feel like for the Steelers, it's a very Steelers pick here by Pittsburgh in round two, and they get a guy that I thought would go sooner. They get him at 51.
Look, we're never going to be all that excited about offensive line, right? Like that's just it's never going to get your fan base excited. It should here though, right? Because this is a guy who, like you said, he's going to be able to open up those running games, keep that interior pressure off of him a little bit there, no matter who the quarterback is. If it is Justin Fields, you're really going to need a running game for sure. And quite frankly, if it's Russell Wilson, you're going to need a running game too because less pass attempts, right? And it'll help out the next guy too at quarterback. So I'm all for it, kind of spending this draft, focusing in, harnessing in on that offensive line and kind of shaping it up if you're Pittsburgh.
Yeah, it's really going to help out whoever's the quarterback there, whether it's Fields or whether it's Russ or whoever's there later on, to have two pieces here in the first two rounds go for the Steelers. Two foundational pieces after taking Broderick Jones last year. So now you spent three out of your first three picks in the top two rounds. Three of them have been offensive linemen. And you hope that all three of them hit, because if they do hit, then those are foundational pieces for an offensive line that can make a difference for Pittsburgh going forward. So let's go and let's talk about somebody that fell all the way to number 52, and that is A.D. Mitchell, sliding all the way here to Indy, pairing him up with Anthony Richardson and Michael Pittman and Josh Downs. So this is a weapon for Anthony Richardson. I feel like he will love a big, fast receiver here in Mitchell. Took a little bit of a slide here, but we talked about before. He brings an alpha receiver type of mentality, made big time plays in big time situations. So if you're Richardson, you're like, cool, I got a receiver. I could just, tell him that, hey, go deep. I'll go find you. So I feel like, for the Colts, they get Mitchell here in the slide here. I kind of felt like, the Colts were going to get somebody that was going to slide, whether it was going to be Brock on night one, because I felt like that's going to happen, isn't it? Brock is going to go to Indy, but they get Mitchell here in round two.
Yeah, and I'm really surprised he was as far down compared to those other receivers as he was. I didn't there was nearly this much of a gap between him and those other guys, especially Polk for sure, of course. But even compared to kind of the other guys, McConkey and Coleman as well, I thought he belonged right there with those guys. And yeah, you get him half a round after those guys are off the board already. So I don't love it because I think they did not. I don't think they're going to run a ton of 3 wide receiver sets, which is the way their offense runs. But he can be an alpha number 2 though as well. Like him and Pittman together is gonna be a really, really good combo. And it was taking the best player on the board, who fell quite a bit further than we thought he would though. So I'm always gonna be in favor of that. And hey, you got that young quarterback. Give him as many weapons as you can.
Yeah, you got to help out your young quarterback. You can give them all the opportunities to succeed. And yeah, I'll tell you what, Pittman and Mitchell, they're 2 big receivers. Mitchell does
Yeah.
offer a little bit more speed, but I'm sure Anthony Richardson, he's not going to complain about this pick. Is like, cool, I got another guy I can throw it to. Sweet.
And you mentioned that size, Ryan, and not only does it help with like physical catching, right? Like physicality at the line of scrimmage, all that kind of stuff. One of the reasons I did not like Zay Flowers for the Ravens last year is catch radius, right? Lamar, not the most accurate passer in the world. I wanted a bigger receiver, someone who would be
Yeah.
able to kind of, be able to reach out a bit more and give him a bit of a bigger target. Same goes for Anthony Richardson, not the most accurate quarterback in the world. And so giving him more size, right? Like Josh Downs is a pretty small receiver. So giving him just a bigger target is also maybe pretty helpful.
Yeah, no doubt. Let's go to Washington at number 53 as they take Ben Sinnott, the tight end from Kansas State. And he's a guy that got a little bit higher than I think, I didn't I didn't think he would be tight end 2. I felt like it would be Jatavian Sanders. Um, but here he goes at number 53. And there's a need for a tight end because Zach Ertz, he's not going to play forever. So he feels like there's a little bit of a need there. And Dan
Right.
Quinn, he's seen what a good tight end can do for a team. He saw it in Dallas. And so I feel like this is a good pick for Washington. In this little right up here that I'm looking at, he's got some Mark Andrews to his game. Find open spaces, reliable hands, break tackles. So who knows? Maybe Washington's getting Mark Andrews here at 53.
Well, if they're getting Mark Andrews, they're incredibly happy with it, right? And I get the Mark Andrews comparison in that, like, he's more of just very reliable set of hands than he is like physically overwhelming, right? Like, I don't think anybody's ever going to accuse Mark Andrews of being the like Kyle Pitts, right? They're never going to get those two guys confused.
Right.
Ben Sinnott's kind of more in that range. I get that. I think he's a better blocker than Andrews, at least for sure at the time of Andrews being drafted, right? That was kind of Andrews' weakness, was blocking. And as unexciting as that is, I think that's very important with a Jaden Daniels led offense where your tight end is going to be asked to block a lot. And that's definitely going to be a part of this offense. I think he's just kind of a guy at tight end. I really do. I don't think he's anything special. Like in a mega universe, his mega upside is George Kittle, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's the upside, but I think that upside has like a 5% chance of hitting. I think it's far more likely
Yeah.
that he's just a bit of a well-rounded, competent set of hands who's a really good blocker.
I mean, hey, listen, that's not the worst thing in the world. That can really help out Jaden Daniels. You got a guy
Oh,
that you're
for sure.
confident in getting it to. It's like, hey, I can't get it to any of these other guys. I need somebody I can throw it to and know that they are going to catch the ball and we're going to be good to go. So that's not the worst thing in the world if that's what he turns out to be. If he does turn out to be anything more, then great. You'll take that. But yeah. So moving on, let's talk about the Browns here at number 54. Browns first pick, and they go in the state of Ohio. They stay in the state of Ohio, and they take Michael Hall Jr. Only started 12 college games, had 12 sacks, and there's a lot of potential here with this guy as a guy that's a twitchy rusher on the inside that can cause a lot of problems that if he reaches his potential can be really big. I feel like for Cleveland, a defensive tackle was a spot that they were going to be attacking in this draft. And that's what they do. They stick in state and take Michael Hall here. And we'll have to see how it goes. But I imagine with how Cleveland likes their defensive tackles, he's not going to get snaps right away, but he's going to rotate, get him adjusted, and maybe put him in on passing down situations and say, like, hey, go and create some inside pressure, right? The interior offense line, cause some havoc.
Yeah, that's exactly what I think. It's interesting to see more and more of these defensive tackles, like you said, get drafted and then be passing down guys. But that is where I think he slots in as well, though, and I like that as the archetype for the player there. That's definitely another pass rusher for Cleveland's a good thing. You had Zarius Smith, on this roster too, who's not getting any younger for sure. Myles Garrett needs some help. He can't get all the sacks, right? You're gonna want a few more from somebody else. So Cleveland, they've got that really good defense. Yeah, I'm cool with it. Just keep building on that.
Yeah, for sure. Next up, Miami at number 55, taking Patrick Paul, the offensive tackle out of Houston. And it does feel like this is a pick in preparation for, okay, this is a guy that's going to be a Teron Armstead replacement down the line. Has extraordinary arm length, incredible wingspan for a tackle his size. A little bit raw, but you're banking on just like the incredible athletic traits he has as a left tackle. You're like, okay, that can be good, even though we have a left-handed quarterback in Tua. Regardless of whether they have him this year or whether they move on later, this is a guy that's going to be an Armstead replacement. And hey, listen, he can learn under Armstead. Armstead is one of the better left tackles in this league. You can learn from worse. And so I think for Patrick Paul, that this is a win for you. You get to go in this offense and you get to learn from one of the best left tackles in the game.
For sure. I thought this is going to be Fisher because I figured with the left-handed quarterback thing, you'd want the right tackle to maybe a bit more of a priority. That position, I think, was kind of a mess last year, if I remember right. But the offensive line as a whole was kind of a mess, right? And we've seen, too, that when Armstead gets hurt quite a bit, this offense kind of falls apart a little bit over the course of the last couple of years. So definitely not a bad idea to get some insurance. Kind of reminds me of the Jets pick on night one a little bit in that regard, where like they've got Tyron Smith and he's not playing 17 games. So you might as well take a guy to at least replace him for those handful of games he'll miss.
Exactly. It feels very similar to that Jets pick in night one, in which is like we're drafting for the future, but if he needs to step in, we feel like we got a solid guy that can come in and learn and is ready to take snaps right away if need be. Let's talk about America's team and the Cowboys in the second round. And kind of a little bit surprise here. They go not running back here, which is what I thought they were going to do, but they go edge rusher and they take Marshall Nealon. I feel like this is a guy that could have gone a little bit sooner. I feel like there's a lot of buzz. And this is a guy that he's raw, but you can see the traits on screen. Just the effort that he brings, the strength, the twitch on the edge that he has. There's a lot to like here. And listen, DeMarcus Lawrence, he's in his 30s. He's not going to play around a long time forever either. So gets you some DeMarcus Lawrence insurance and gets you a guy that you can pair alongside Micah Parsons in the foreseeable future.
Yeah, for sure. It also, having depth on the edge keeps the versatility of Micah Parsons in play, right? We kind of saw this with Clay Matthews a little bit, right? Where a guy who used to kind of bounce around all over the place kind of got locked into one spot because they didn't have depth to be able to move him around anymore. So if you're the Cowboys, that's one thing to keep in mind. You always have to kind of keep that depth so that way when you are moving him around, there's no open spots.
That is true. It brings great for this. Having depth on the defensive line, you can never go wrong with that. That's an added bonus in the NFL or any stage of football. If you got the depth up front, you should feel pretty good about that and just can rotate those guys in and out and feel good about it each and every snap. So let's talk about another edge rusher, this time from Alabama, Chris Braswell going to Tampa. Tampa needed another edge rusher. They get one here in Braswell, the second Alabama edge rusher to go here, the less heralded of the two, but they get Braswell here. And as a guy that was a jack of all trades kind of guy for Alabama last year, he needs to develop his pass rushing skills. He needs to develop that, but I imagine Todd Bowles and Tampa, they are going to give him the time to be able to do that and develop as a pass rusher because they need one. They lost Shaquille Barrett. He got up there in age, and you got Joe Tyron Sharinka out there. So you need some help out there with, and you get that with Braswell here. Get Alabama pass rusher. So there you go.
Yeah, he was my Ravens guy. I was kind of hoping for him in round 2. He reminds me a little bit of Matthew Judon in the way that he can also kind of like drop back a little bit too. But definitely going after the quarterback is I like him a lot. I prefer him over the pass rusher for sure. That Dallas took just one spot earlier. So big thumbs up for me for this pick with Tampa. They continue to kind of try to reload in positions that used to be a strength for them during the Super Bowl run with the interior line in round 1 and then edge in round 2 here. So we'll see. Yeah, definitely the Shaq Barrett, plug and play replacement.
Yeah. Green Bay back up on the board at 58. They go back to Georgia and they take Javon Bullard. Now, they were the team that signed Xavier McKinney, but they still needed some secondary help, maybe particularly at corner, but they get Bullard here at safety and they just continue that Georgia pipeline. And he has a lot of intangibles that you like as a safety. Maybe needs to work on being able to control himself, and keeping that under control. But as a guy from Georgia, the Georgia pipeline. You drafted from it on that side of the ball here a couple times now. So I feel like you have pretty good intel on what he can bring to this defense after going to that well a couple times. So they go and take Javon Bullard, help out that secondary room, in which they needed some help there, corner or safety. And so they go there.
Yeah, and stylistically, he seems like a pretty good match to go alongside McKinney. And yeah, he can cover those slot corners too as well. So that's always gonna be helpful as well. Another player I don't know a whole heck of a lot about these back half of round 2 defensive players, but they definitely, yeah, I'm cool with the safety pick for sure for Green Bay.
Next up, Joe Alt's running mate Blake Fisher goes 59 to the Houston Texans. And this is a guy that has a lot of length to him too at right tackle and can bring that to this Houston Texans offense, in which it's got a whole lot more explosive with adding Stephon Diggs here to that group. And is more of a guy that is more of a run blocker. And he's probably going to be a right tackle at the next level. And he got Titus Howard there. So they go and add another piece to this offensive line. It can't hurt. You got to protect your investment in CJ Stroud after what he did last year. You got to be able to do that. So Blake Fisher here going back to Notre Dame. Hey, listen, Notre Dame offensive linemen, they tend to work out pretty well, So why not go back to that well? And I feel like Houston, you help out your young guys there.
And he looks to me like a player who can kick inside too if need be, right? 310, like you say, he's a better run blocker than he's a pass blocker.
Yeah.
That to me looks like a perfect mix to just kick him in that guard and let him play right away too. So yeah, no, protecting that quarterback. Hey, you found the guy, keep him upright.
Yeah, exactly. Next up, we got the Bills going safety here. They needed some secondary help too. And they get Cole Bishop. And this is a guy, and just hearing them talk about it, is a guy that can play in the box, but can also play either safety position, can go in the slot. So it was a versatile piece in for that back end of the Bills defense, in which you had a couple safeties in Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer that were there for years. And so eventually you're going to move on from them. So you need some help here. They go back to Utah and taking Bishop here. So they get some help at safety and helping out. Played like the quarterback of that Utah defense last year. And so for the Bills, you get good value here at safety. So why not go back to Utah and get a guy that can play all over in the back end of that secondary?
Well, and like you said, if he was the quarterback of the Utah defense, the last time the Green Bay Packers took a quarterback of a Utah side of the football field, it wasn't controversial at all. and it worked out pretty well. So why not go right back to it again this time, right? No, in all seriousness, though, you're right. They moved on from Poyer. They moved on from Micah Hyde. It was time those guys aged out. This defense has holes all over the place, man. And so this just helps kind of try to plug one of those.
For sure. Staying with secondary here.
And real quick,
Detroit.
Ryan, real quick, by the way, when he gets burned by Xavier Worthy this year, he's going to immediately look at that press box and be like, guys, this wasn't my fault. This was your fault.
Oh, exactly. And you know what? I don't know if the Bills play the Panthers, but maybe the same thing with Xavier Legette there. You know, if he just big boys them, it's like, guys, come on. You didn't give me a chance. Sticking with secondary here with Detroit, the host of this draft, they go back to the corner again and they go to Mizzou and take Ennis Rakestraw. And this is a guy that feels like he's a physical, feisty corner too, like Terrion Arnold. And so they get two of these guys after adding Carlton Davis from Tampa. And so, listen, that's it. That was a clear need for Detroit, getting some help in that secondary, and they double dip. I feel like this is a good pick for them. You know, you can't have too much help back there in that secondary. And again, considering the weapons that are in this division, you need all the help you can get. So, for Rakestraw, you get another feisty corner that Dan Campbell, I'm sure, will love to bite some kneecaps with.
For sure. And like I said, he's a physical corner too. That's always going to be nice for him. And yeah, corner was like the need for Detroit at this point, right? They've done a really good job building everything else across the football field. They could not cover wide receivers, it felt like. So this was pretty obviously the spot to go get a guy.
Definitely, for sure. Now, the one thing though, he doesn't have the greatest of length, and he doesn't have the greatest athleticism as well. So that might be something to keep an eye on. But listen, love this pick by Detroit. Honestly, I've loved what the NFC North teams have done here so far, and I've really kind of I've loved. I stated in the round one recap, although it was a little bit too soon. It's only in the first round, but after a few picks in, I'm really liking what these teams are doing.
Yeah, all four of them. I mean, I think of the non-big three QBs, I like the way Minnesota played the board the best. And they got their guy. And in my opinion, they got the best guy outside the big three. Chicago, I think, made the right choice with Rome Odunze. Green Bay, I've liked all the picks for them. And I even like the trade back too. They did pick up that extra pick, even though they already had a ton. You can always add more. Yeah. And Detroit going corners. I think that was the right move for them as well. So yeah, 4 for 4, really freaking good division right now.
I'll tell you what, that division is going to be wild next year. That's going to be a super competitive division. That's going to be one that's going to be like, man, I don't know who to go here with as far as picks. But let's go and let's talk about your Ravens here, and let's talk about the newest tackle for the Baltimore Ravens, and that is Roger Rosengarten, team Troy Faltanu's running mate, and they stick in that same division. And technically, he protected Michael Penix's blind side.
Yeah.
And so, Matt, talk about your new Baltimore Raven here a little bit.
Yeah. I don't know a whole lot about him. Like I said, he was a blindside blocker for Penix, and he was the guy who was able to actually keep Penix healthy, right? Like Penix been hurt every other stop of the road before this. So that's definitely been encouraging to see. I'm also just really happy to see that, like, I like Daniel Falalele as like the mountain of a man that he is. But I think he's more of a sixth offensive lineman, kind of extra guy to plug in on occasion or go with an offset line kind of thing. I don't want him out there every down. And so this for sure solves that problem, right? Morgan Moses, he's gone free agency. Also, Ronnie Stanley always gets hurt, and so you can always just use more tackles on this team. And so I'm all for that. I was hopeful for edge rusher. I was hoping for my guy Braswell there, but once he got picked, Rosengarten was kind of the guy I was looking at. He was kind of the guy I was eyeing up. Either him or Blake Fisher, either one.
Yeah, and listen, they need some help on that offensive line. I mean, they lost some key pieces there, in this offseason. So you need to kind of retool and rebuild and make sure your big time investment in Lamar Jackson, you know, it's going to pay off, and you got to keep him upright. So, yeah, Rosengarten, I feel like is a guy that kind of rose up the boards here, and maybe could have gone a little bit sooner, but he goes number 62 to the Ravens. The Chiefs, they go offensive tackle too, and they go with Kingsley Subomatea, who's got some Penei Sewell connections. I believe they said they're cousins
Yeah.
in the draft show. So those are some pretty good connections, I think, if you're Kansas City. You just saw the big contract that Sewell just landed these past few days. So I feel like this been kind of an underrated need for the Chiefs. The tackle. I hadn't seen it brought up until recently, and so as a guy that they need a left tackle, and they need some guys on the offensive line because you got Trey Smith and Creed Humphrey. Their deals are coming up, and you might have to pay them. So you needed to go offensive line here, and he might not be ready to go right away, but I feel like you can give him time to develop, and then just plug him in when he's ready, and then you're ready to go.
Yeah, that's one thing locally they've been talking about a lot is bringing back Donovan Smith on a 1-year deal. He's just kind of like out there in free agency waiting for the call to come back, right? Bring him back on a 1-year deal. Let this kid develop. They didn't know who at the time, right? But like that was kind of the thing a lot of sports talk radio here in Kansas City was talking about was taking a tackle and letting them develop for a year, and then maybe replacing Smith mid-season with him, or even kicking Mr. False Start Jawan Taylor to the curb mid-season, right? Kicking him to the bench. So that's definitely kind of a way I can see it going for sure. Is he doesn't start the year, but he finishes the year in the lineup.
Yeah, maybe it can be like, if you remember how Kansas City's young guys in the secondary, how they had some road bumps early on, but then later on they started to pick up and start to really play well. Maybe that could be a situation here with Kingsley and placing him on that offensive line. So final pick of the second round, and that is San Francisco going corner here and taking Renardo Green from Florida State. Now, and doing and looking up some stuff about him as it loads, it's not one to load for me right now, but Florida State defensive back here. Listen, the 49ers needed some defensive back help as well. Looking at some of these teams in the back half, they needed a guy here. They get somebody in Renardo Green that can really, I think, can help out back there. And it's a position of need for the Niners. And so you go here with Green out of Florida State. And okay, so now the blurb has kind of shown up. And he did play against Malik Neighbors a whole lot in the 2023 opener, had a strong start. Doesn't have the best size, so that's something to be concerned about. But for the 49ers, you need somebody that has good coverage skills, and he's somebody that can do that and helping out in that NFC West.
Yeah, for sure. It was like the one like weak spot in this defense was corner depth. Not even necessarily starting corner, just corner depth. So totally throwing another guy at that, not a bad idea.
All right, so we are now to round number 3, and I don't have the ticker set up for this, but we're a few picks into round 3. We are at pick number 90, so we only got 10 more picks left to go in round 3. So let's start off here round 3 with the Jets. They go get Aaron Rodgers, a receiver. Sorry, Aaron Rodgers, the GM, gets himself a playmaker, and Malachi Corley, a guy that gets a lot of yards after the catch. And listen, for the Jets, you needed some help at receiver, need another weapon for Rodgers, and you got Mike Williams on that 1-year deal. Get you somebody else besides Garrett Wilson. This is always the move, I think, for the Jets. Whether it's go receiver or weapon in the first round or go offense lineman in the third, they do the opposite here. I feel like either or was always the move here, and so they get Corley from Western Kentucky and hope that he can be a yak monster for him.
Shoot. Okay, Ryan. I forgot that I forgot that Aaron Rodgers was in charge for a second. That's on me. I had I there was no way to actually like place this bet, but I was willing to bet everything that the team that drafted Malachi Corley would have offensive coordinator Shanahan connections. Debo specifically, like Debo Samuel connections, right? And
Right.
I remembered Robert Saleh is the head coach. He came from San Francisco. Well, surely that means their offensive coordinator came from San Francisco. I forgot that Aaron Rodgers made sure that he hired Nathaniel Hackett to be his puppet and offensive coordinator. I forgot. That's on me. So unfortunately, the offensive coordinator is not a guy who worked with Debo Samuel, but Malachi Corley, the Debo Samuel comparisons, they're right there. They're all over the place with him. The Yak King, as he's known. He's really, really fun. I don't know if he's going to be any good. It takes a really special game plan, I think. A lot like with Debo, honestly. Like, I don't know. I think there's a lot of offenses where Debo Samuel would not be all that good. But San Fran is creative with his usage. Yeah. They are committed to his usage, right? That's going to be Malachi Corley, hopefully, and so I think it's a really good idea, too, in that you've got a 40-year-old quarterback who you want to keep upright. Screen game is going to be a big part of that, right? Not only keeping him upright, keeping him healthy. Time. Also, you hate to question Aaron Rodgers too much, but we saw with Breeze, we saw with Peyton, we saw with Brady, deteriorating arm strength. It happens at some point, right? And so to get a guy who's a great screen receiver, I think that's a great idea here. A guy who can do something with it after the ball's in his hands. He's not just a deep route guy. He can catch the ball short and then take it after that. So big thumbs up from me for a round 3 Malachi Corley pick for the New York Jets.
Yeah. Corley, listen, I don't know if Nathaniel Hackett's going to be the guy to necessarily bring out that Debo Samuel aspect out of Malachi Corley. I mean, you never know, but it's hard for me to see Hackett being able to bring that out. It really is.
Was Hackett ever with Randall Cobb?
I mean, I don't know. Maybe back when they were with Green Bay. That's the only thing I can think of.
And so, look,
I
that's
don't
not a bad comp
Randall
either.
Had left.
Yeah, I'm trying to look. I think okay, it looks like he was there in 2016. And so by then, your Cobb would still have been there. Oh, I'm sorry, 2019.
So.
2019 was his first year with Green Bay. So by that point, you're getting really old man Randall Cobb, who was nothing. So never mind. I was hoping, though. I was really pulling for you, Hackett. Do something, man.
Let's go to Arizona and let's talk about them picking up Trey Benson to produce for them in that running back room, team up with James Conner and see how good of a compliment he can be. And it felt like they needed somebody at running back to team up with Conner, and they go with Trey Benson here. And it feels like, eventually he'll probably be the guy down the line for them. But for now, he and Conner are probably going to be in a split backfield.
I don't know, man. He could take this straight up right at the gate. Like, it could be week 2, and all of a sudden Trey Benson's the one who's out there getting more touches than James Conner. That wouldn't surprise me at all. James Conner's 29 at this point. He has never been an explosive runner. He's always kind of been a plotter. And it wouldn't surprise me one bit if he is totally relegated to, like, not even 1B. He is relegated to. And Trey Benson just gets to take off and be the guy. This is building up to be an exciting Arizona offense, right? Like, Michael Wilson's a player who I liked a lot last year. Marvin Harrison, obviously, and now Trey Benson with a healthy Kyler Murray. I think there's some fun to be had here in Arizona. And yeah, Trey Benson, I'm pretty darn happy to see him land in Arizona. That's a pretty good spot to me.
Yeah, that Arizona offense just got got a whole lot of fun real fast here. You can getting Marvin, and now you get Trey here in that backfield. And Kyler, I'm sure is like, man, thank you guys for helping me out here. I needed some help here. I just came off this torn ACL. I need some help here. So Trey Benson goes to Arizona there at number 66. Washington goes offensive line, Brandon Coleman, but it seems like he's a guy that can play guard or tackle for Washington. So we'll have to see where he fits on this Washington offense. So he has the ability to play both. He has the athleticism to work in both. But I don't know where he'll fit into this Cliff Kingsbury offense. But he's going to have to protect Jane Daniels. So listen, any pick that is an investment helping out your franchise quarterback they just drafted, that spot on. Go for it. Fine by me.
Yep, for sure. And the same goes with this next pick. Ryan, admittedly, for the rest of this draft, unless they're a skill position player on offense or if we end up getting a quarterback yet, I'm not going to be really any help at all on the specifics of the players at this point. We are a bit deeper than my knowledge for players outside the fantasy realm. But definitely going offensive line to helping out your new quarterback. Yeah, I can't say no to that too much.
And that's what the Patriots did. They go offense line here. They go to Penn State, though. They decided to go to Penn State, and get Nittany Lion for I'm sure this is a pick that Peter Lewis made for the Patriots, and getting
Absolutely.
Caden Wallace.
For
you
sure.
know,
That's the
I don't
Lewis
know
special.
why. I don't know why he went North Carolina and he went Washington with those first two picks. I'm sure he would have found a way to sneak in a couple Penn State guys with those first two picks. But Patriots here going offensive lineman here, Caden Wallace, a thick-bodied right tackle. I don't know if he can go to left tackle, and that that's something I feel like the Patriots kind of need. You got a right tackle in a Winwu, so I really don't know about this pick for the Patriots. I feel if he can make that switch to left tackle, then great. And is a guy that played a lot of college football. Started 40 games. He has the experience. So they got a right tackle here. Maybe they hope he can make the switch to left tackle. So I really don't know about this one. It feels like a little bit of a reach for the Patriots here in the third round. Maybe they could have gotten somebody a little bit better. Uh, you know, there's a guy I feel like that went to the Bears. They could have gone a little bit later on. So, Peter Lewis, the GM, I don't love the pick here. no. So, sorry, Peter. There's no future there as being a GM. But let's talk about the next pick, and that is, listen, I felt like the Chargers they were destined to take a Michigan man at some point,
Yeah.
and they take one here at 69 with Junior Colson. They needed a linebacker here, and you lose Kenneth Murray. You need a guy in Colson that played a lot of snaps for Harbaugh in that Michigan defense, was contributing there for that national championship team. Big time tackler too, as a guy that stacked up a lot of tackles. And so he fell out of the top 50 picks. Maybe there's some coverage limitations he has there, but for Harbaugh, he knows what he's getting out of Colson. So listen, who am I to say like this isn't a good pick? Harbaugh knows what these guys from Michigan are going to bring to the table. He coached them, he recruited them. So listen, they need a linebacker. They get Colson here. I like this pick.
I was just happy it wasn't Blake Corum. They were always going to do a Michigan player at some point. Round 3 felt like the spot where they're going to go Michigan.
Yeah, they could have gone round 2 with Jenkins or Sanders still. They kind of needs at those positions too, but they go linebacker here. They got a need here. I mean, they had a need. They have a need at running back. They could have gone Corum, but no. They go Colson here at 69. The Giants go corner, and they continue to stack up that secondary. Get some more secondaries help. Andrew Phillips, size, is not the best. He's a shorter corner from Kentucky. And so he's probably a guy that's going to play a little bit of slot, play nickel back, but has a lot of toughness and has great tackling skills. And so that can bring something to this Giants secondary and help them out. So they go secondary there with their 2 picks. The Cardinals, we just talked about them. They get Kyler Murray some more help, get Isaiah Adams from Illinois. Going back to Peter, that's close to Peterland right over there. So they go there. Isaiah Adams can play guard, and that's what they need right now. You got Jonah Williams in free agency. So you get him here as a really, as this blurb has it, a ornery run blocker and a strong finisher. And I think that, Trey Benson, I think, will really like this pick as much as Kyler Murray will. So, yeah. Hey, listen, I'm really liking what Arizona is doing. They're making the most out of all of these picks.
I agree. Their defense might suck, but everything else, I've liked this a lot for the offense, though. And for sure, adding another offensive lineman after a couple weapons, not a bad idea.
So next up, we had another Kentucky player go on the board. I don't like saying this. I don't like seeing Kentucky guys go before Tennessee guys. I have to take a look at it. So no Jalen Wright has not been taken. So that's kind of a bummer to me. I'm wearing this Tennessee jersey for a reason tonight and hoping that he gets picked here in round 3.
The Ravens are currently on the clock, Ryan. So I would not be opposed to this being your guy, Jalen Wright.
Well, I mean, you already took one Tennessee guy away from me and Derrick Henry, so that's enough.
We would just have the Ryan McDaniel backfield.
It's just, oh man, talk about bringing me so much pain just watching Derrick wear Baltimore purple and then just seeing Jalen wear. And well, hey, listen, you guys don't have a Tennessee player last I checked on that roster, so hey, you guys need to get with the times here, all right? No, yeah. So Trevor Wallace goes here to the Panthers, a guy that kind of rose up as well. And he's capable of covering tight ends and running backs and should be a 3-down linebacker. And you kind of need that here. So, yeah, for Carolina, you really need a linebacker here. You honestly need everything, but they get a linebacker here. So, there you go. And Matt's Ravens just took a Penn State player. So instead of going Tennessee, they go with Peter here and take a decent Isaac a little bit later on. So yeah,
I haven't seen it yet.
Matt's okay. So oh no, I just spoiled it.
Yeah, I don't know who that is though, so I don't know the position yet. Oh, linebacker.
Edge
okay,
rusher.
is he?
Yeah.
Oh, he is that guy. Okay, good, perfect. I was kind of joking earlier today how the Ravens need to take a 3rd-round pass rusher so that way he can be good in 3 years. Like, it's our specialty.
Well, hey, there you go. So now you got 2 Penn State edge rushers. Man, come on. Stop taking Peter's guys, Matt. What's Harbaugh doing over there?
We're letting him infiltrate us.
Oh man, that's the worst idea. Letting Pierre Lewis do that? No. That's a terrible idea. Don't do that. That's down on the list of great ideas. That's not even making the list. Yeah, so Isaac goes there. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But Cooper Beebe from Kansas State going to the Cowboys. And listen, this is a need for the Cowboys and building up this offensive line. You really kind of need to do something here and helping out Dak Prescott. And we'll have to see what that running back situation is going to look like. I did see something where there's a possibility that Zeke might be coming back. So that's something to keep an eye on there if you're a Cowboys fan. But Cooper Beebe, kind of surprised he lasted this long. Felt like he could have gone a little bit sooner too. And feel he's going to be a perfect fit at guard. And if he doesn't start, can provide some depth at which you need it if you're the Cowboys. You need some help if on that offensive line and rebuilding that back up to be a strength, because for the Cowboys, that's been a strength for a long time. Why not get it back that way? So I like this pick for the Cowboys here at 73.
Yeah, for sure. The Great Wall of Dallas fell down many years ago, so keep adding bricks back to it.
Oh yeah, for sure. So moving on to number 74 here, Braylon Trice goes to Atlanta. They finally get that pass rusher, in which they should have taken. I'm sorry, they should have taken one at number 8. You know, they took Michael Penix. Last I checked, he can't play edge rusher unless there's something we don't know that Atlanta does. But
There's a lot of things apparently
Atlanta
about
goes
him that we don't know that Atlanta does.
a lot of things that Kirk Cousins didn't know. A lot of things Arthur Blank didn't know.
Right.
The we know communication is key, and there's just no communication at all with Atlanta. So
Yeah.
they go back to Washington though. They take Trice, a guy that produced consistent stuff for the Huskies for 2 years, and you get a guy in with him that he's bulked up for his pro day, and if he's able to give effort and has some pop with that hand with those hands of his, he might be able to win. But it feels like a guy that's a developmental pass rusher that needs to develop his pass rushing moves and get things going here for the foreseeable future. So let's talk about the Bears here. They go offensive line here at 75 and take Kieran Amagaji, and I probably just butchered that one, but they go Ivy League here at number 75 with him. It feels like this is a developmental tackle too. He only played in 4 games in 2023, and you know, probably restricted in what he can do and workout wise. So, I mean, listen, you need to help out Caleb Williams any way you can. And we've talked about this before. I feel like Braxton Jones saw left tackle, but yeah, they go with a guy that's a developmental player, and you can't hurt going and helping out Caleb Williams. But I wonder if this is a pick in mind and where maybe he slides inside, but we'll see.
Yeah, tackle, but yeah, Hickson decided to develop. Yeah, like you said, only played 4 games last year, so really a developmental guy, definitely a raw prospect. But it's round 3. You're gonna see a ton of those where
Yeah.
they're mystery box guys. You just hope someone hits.
And don't worry, Matt. We have some skill position guys coming up here soon.
Like I said, I'm not any help with most of these guys. There's a couple coming up though. I'm really intrigued about.
Oh yeah. We'll get to them here in a few. Let's go to you. Let's go to Denver. They select Jonah Ellis, who is the son of former Lions defensive lineman Luther Ellis, and is a little bit of an undersized rusher. He broke out last season with the Utes as an edge rusher. Has decent length, some good effort there, and so for Denver, honestly, it felt like they need to go and address all these different positions, and they went quarterback in round 1. So that was the move for them there. And so they get an edge rusher here on day 2, and they're going to have a lot of picks on day 3 that they're going to be picking up. Next up at number 77, you got the Raiders back on the board. Going offensive lineman again, a guy that can play left or right tackle, has some good length, good athleticism, or so athleticism. Had some injuries in the past, including an ACL injury, so that's something to consider. Might be more of a swing tackle at the next level, but he could potentially compete maybe for that right tackle position down the line for the Raiders. So the Raiders, they just continue to build on more physical guys and getting them to the building. You know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it with what they've done in the draft so far.
Yeah, I'm just seeing here he's ranked 226 by ESPN. Sorry, 177. So maybe a bit of a reach based on their
Yeah,
ranking, but that is just one ranking. So who knows?
that is true. Houston, they go back on the clock and they take Kalen Bullock from USC. Safety, get some safety help there. This guy is extremely long for a safety. He doesn't turn
Yeah.
21 until next week. So happy early birthday in advance. He's got the height, he's got the ball skills, and he's got a lean frame though. But again, D'Amico Ryans, you know what he can bring in coaching up a defense. And I feel like he's a guy that D'Amico's going to do well with. They get a couple secondary guys in there for that defense. You know what you got up front. You've already added up there a whole lot this offseason. And so you get him and Kalen Bullock in there to help out with that secondary. And you see what he does at safety. Maybe he's a center field type of guy there for Houston. So there you go. Next up, we got the Colts on the board taking Matt I had to get the name right. Matt Goncalves from Pittsburgh. Another guy that offers a little bit of versatility, has taken some snaps at center, and maybe could play some guard. So a guy that can pretty much play, it sounds like anywhere, offers some versatility. Large frame, got some athletic limitations though, but is really fierce in the run game and could be a good piece for this Indy offensive line. So I know who will give this pick an A plus. Jonathan Taylor, that's for sure. So, anytime he gets an offensive lineman, he's not going to knock it. So, Matt, we are back with the skill position player at number 80,
Yay!
and that is Jermaine Burton going to the Cincinnati Bengals at pick 80.
Yeah, interesting for sure. He's a guy who a deep threat, burner, not a real big receiver. I think that's an interesting fit with Higgins and Chase there still. I kind of thought that they may go with a bit of a Higgins archetype player this year. We had like an A.D. Mitchell, we had a Keon Coleman go off the board earlier in round 2. I kind of thought maybe they're going to go that route, but I thought for sure they'd be taking a receiver at some point. I didn't think Charlie Jones or Ishavas was really going to get much of a role moving forward for Cincinnati. So, yeah, Jermaine Burton, he's a really underrated receiver. I know there's a lot of people that really, really like him. And look, I assume Tyler Boyd won't be back on this roster. And a lot of times whenever a receiver's been hurt, Tyler Boyd's been pretty good. And so it's an important role he's going to kind of fill as that third wide receiver in this offense.
Yeah, I'm really kind of interested in how he'll fit in this offense long term. You got T, you don't know what's going to happen there. Maybe he plays out this year in Cincinnati. So you'll have to see how that plays out. But it feels like he does need some time to learn how to be a pro. He does have good hands, does have some speed to his game. So, hey, listen, there's a pretty good place for him to go in Cincinnati here that knows how to utilize wide receivers here. And who knows, might have a wide receiver 2 spot opening up next year. And maybe he can try to find a way to make a play for that next year. So, Jermaine Burton going there at 80 to Cincinnati. Seattle back on the clock in the third round after not having a pick in round 2. They go with Christian Haynes, a guy that has some versatility, can play some guard, play some center, and is a guy that has a lunch pail, bring your lunch pail to work type of guy. And for Seattle, I think Mike McDonald, I think you would really like that. I feel like this is a guy that maybe you would target if you were back in Baltimore. You've seen how that stuff has worked. And so you get a guy that can really help out in the interior, in which you need some interior help if you're Seattle. A guy like him can really help out. Zach Charbonnet, Kenneth Walker can keep Geno or Sam Howell upright and getting the ball to those receivers out there. So for Seattle, this was a pick I feel like they need to make in addressing that offensive line. And maybe right tackle is another thing they look at. Abraham Lucas was hurt last year, so that's something to keep in mind. So let's go and let's talk about some skill position players here from 82 to 84. Arizona back on the board, taking Tip Raymond from Illinois. They go back to Illinois again, and they take him. There you go. And as a guy that is a big tight end, feels like he rose a little bit too. And he's just primarily known for his blocking. So maybe not the biggest guy as far as being a contributor as far as offense is concerned. But as a guy, if you're Trey Benson, you love and James Conner, you love this pick too because they're gonna create some holes for you.
Yeah, for sure. This is like For my personal uses as a fantasy football YouTube channel over at the ADP, this is not a guy who's on my radar at all. But it's intentionally left off, though. I looked into him a little bit because I did see he was rising up and up on draft boards. I'm not surprised he went in round 3. I thought maybe he'd go round 4, but I'm not surprised he went in round 3. Blocking is his thing, though. He's one of the better blocking, probably the best blocking tight end in this class. I think that's probably fair to say. Yeah, he caught 19 passes last season, so definitely Tony Gonzalez, he is not.
Oh, no. Arizona's not getting that out of him. Trey McBride, though, maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe he is Tony Gonzalez. I am Tony Gonzalez.
Yeah, so next up, we got 3 Michigan players that went off the board back to back here, starting at 83 with Blake Corum going to the Rams. I kind of felt like the Rams were going to take a running back, and they go with Blake Corum here, out of Michigan, going to the Rams.
Yeah, I felt the same way, that they seemed like a landing spot for one of these running backs. I'm not a huge Blake Corum guy. He kind of seems like he's a little bit of everything, but not much of anything. Ryan, I'm gonna let you talk about him for just a second because I'm about to sneeze.
Yeah, so Blake, I kind of explained this on the kind of guys I'm down on. He's had a lot of carries in his college career. So I really don't. I feel like one thing that could help him, though, can be in a timeshare with Kyron Williams here with the Rams. Maybe that can help him out here, not having as many carries. But as far as being a running back of his size, not really big, also not really a factor in the passing game as well. So as far as those aspects, not really in love with those aspects, but he is good. He's tough, and he is physical for a guy his size. Really instinctive too. There's a reason why he had 50 plus touchdowns at Michigan. I feel like, listen, he's going to have limited carries with the Rams, and that's not a bad thing for Blake. Splitting that with Kyron Williams.
Yeah. I'm also just quickly here looking up the history of running backs drafted in round 3. I think it is round 3 for Sean McVay. I'm sorry, Cam Akers was round 2. Darrell Henderson was round 3. So not exactly the most success there in the world. Of course, you do have the Kyron Williams pick back in round 5 last year, or 2 years ago now it was. But I don't know. I'm not. Oh, I got kicked out. The draft's not over, is it? The TV kicked me out of the draft.
Uh-oh.
Anyway, yeah. So Blake Corum, I'm not a huge fan of him as a player. I think it's a very good, potentially good landing spot, though, where, man, opportunities to score all over the place there in Los Angeles. Like you said, he doesn't have to shoulder all of the work, which is probably a good thing for a player at his size. He just, he just doesn't excite me in any way. Scored a lot of touchdowns. Yeah. How much that comes from just kind of being the running back at Michigan, though, I don't know. I do like the idea of the Rams for sure, though, having taken a running back to pair with Kyron, because I'm also not a huge Kyron guy either, but they made him work great this past year.
Yeah, that is true. So no, we'll definitely have to see. In thinking about landing spots, this is a pretty good one for him and landing with the Rams, and we'll have to see what he does here. Next up, let's talk about a Michigan wide receiver here in Roman Wilson, landing with the Pittsburgh Steelers, a guy that can create a lot of separation. Wasn't a big factor in the passing game because Michigan didn't pass it all that much, but when they did, was a guy that made big time plays. I remember he had a big time catch against Ohio State, in which JJ really threw a pretty good ball there. So so I almost said Russell Wilson. So Roman Wilson.
That's going to be confusing.
Yeah, I already got confused here, and he hasn't even signed his contract yet. Yeah, Roman Wilson is a guy that can win with toughness, can really separate with the best of them, has some savviness to his route running, and the Steelers needed somebody in the wide receiver room, trading Deontay Johnson. So it felt like inevitable that the Steelers were going to take a wide receiver, and we'll see another wide receiver this late for them hit again. It's inevitable.
Well, and he's a wide receiver who's got a lot of experience, just kind of standing off to the side, maybe blocking a little bit, and watching his coach run the football 40 times a game. And that's what's going to happen with Arthur Smith as the offensive coordinator. So he's a great fit in that regard, right? I do think he's a wide receiver who is better off being a 2 than a 1. In all seriousness, and that's what he can be with George Pickens. Pickens really needs to be more than just a go route receiver. But Roman Wilson can be a little bit of everything, though. Kind of helps offset that a little bit, though. So he may actually get himself out a pretty good little role. Deontay Johnson, man, he's gone. And there was a lot of targets that went Deontay Johnson's way. And so Roman Wilson to help fill that void. Just a do-it-all guy.
Yeah, he's going to have his opportunities really early on with Russell Wilson or with Justin Fields. Whichever one's back there. Honestly, I kind of, for my sake, it's Justin Fields, so I don't get confused.
For all of our sakes, of every Justin Fields.
Sorry, Russ. Zach Zinner here, the final Michigan guy going here out of these three, going to Cleveland, and is a guy that can play some guard, can play some center. We've seen this Michigan offensive line in the past be really physical. He's a guy that's smart, tough, athletic. You just know what you're going to get out of him being from a part of that Michigan offensive line. And he had some medical evaluation stuff a little bit later on in the Ohio State game, had a bad injury in that one. So that's something to be concerned about that late in the season. But other than that, fits right into Cleveland with what I think they want to do, be a physical running type of team. And he'll fit right in on the interior of that offensive line. San Francisco, they go in interior of the offensive line. Dominic Pooney from Kansas. And I'm not going to make the same mistake I made a couple years ago and saying the famous catchphrase of Kansas. I almost got strangled because of it, because of a certain fiance of Matt's putting in the group chat.
What's the catchphrase, Ryan?
No. I'm not getting baited into that.
She's just right in the other room, Ryan.
I'm not getting baited into that. No. I'm gonna hear about it. No. I hate I even brought that up. Anyway, Dominic Pooney from Kansas. San Francisco needed some offensive line help. A guy that can play tackle, guy that can play guard, to packs a punch and the power that he can bring. And Shanahan, he's going to love that. Add him to the running game. There you go. Christian McCaffrey gets a new blocker that he can thank you for creating this huge, gigantic hole for me and helping somebody's fantasy team out. And maybe it's mine next year. We'll have to see.
Yep.
Next up, Cowboys taking Maris. Oh man, I'm going to butcher this. Liafu. I'm just going to pronounce it like that. I know I'm probably butchering that. Cowboys had a need at linebacker too. Surprised they haven't gone running back here with their first few picks. Maybe they can find somebody a little bit later on. Maybe Braylon Allen. If I had to see if he goes here with these final. But he didn't go here. Maybe Braylon Allen. Maybe Jalen Wright. Estime from Notre Dame. We'll have to see about those guys. But no, they go Liafu here. They need a linebacker here. And they go Notre Dame here to go and get him. So Cowboys go linebacker there. Next up, we do have a running back, though. Marshawn Lloyd from USC going to Green Bay. And I felt like the Packers were going to take a running back, but maybe not this early.
Yeah, I think it seems like about the right time. I think they really do view AJ Dillon as kind of just a guy at this point. So that backup role, I think, was really kind of up in the air behind Josh Jacobs. And Josh Jacobs, remember the way his deal is structured, it's really a 1-year deal. That's pretty heavily optioned beyond that. So that doesn't shock me to see them take a guy
Right.
here.
Okay.
And this is a coach who's always kind of had a two-back system, right? AJ's played a lot over the last few years. So even though he didn't always produce the greatest in the world, he played a lot. Yeah, so Marshawn Lloyd, I think he's a pretty good compliment though to have opposite Josh Jacobs. I think he's going to, like, for fantasy purposes, I think that he's going to be like a pretty darn good handcuff. I don't think he's gonna be one of these RB2s that you can punch into your lineup at all. And for these like rookie drafts, I think he's just gonna be like a mid-round 2 pick for the rookie drafts in Dynasty.
Yeah, and he's had some medical stuff that's popped up in his time in college, and I felt like there were some times last year at USC where they didn't run the ball as much as they should because they put a lot on Caleb's plate, and I mean, rightfully so. He's the number one pick, and you're not going to do anything otherwise. But Lloyd didn't get a whole lot of consistency. I feel like last year with USC, but I feel like he can offer some ability there for Green Bay in that running back room, and who knows, maybe this could be a sneaky pick for Green Bay and taking Lloyd here at number 88 and can offer some 3 down ability, has some burst in this game. And in this little blurb, I see a poor man's DeAndre Swift potentially. So
Yeah,
I mean, yeah,
and
if you're
that's a really
Detroit,
good
if you get a
that,
guy
that,
like that, yeah,
that's a really good skill set to have be complementing with Josh Jacobs too, because Jacobs is like the opposite of DeAndre Swift in so many ways.
yes, big time. Let's go back to Tampa Bay and see them taking Tyke Smith from Georgia. And let's see, Antoine Winfield, you franchise tag him. You might need a safety here pretty soon. And in this little burb, I see a Mike Edwards like projection, and so easy to see why the Bucks might do that. They had Mike Edwards a couple years ago. Uh, Smith a little bit undersized, not the best athlete, but has the nose for the ball. Played in that Georgia defense in that secondary. So back to the Georgia well. You're going to take him, and I think you're not going to go against that. So he might be more of a special teams kind of a contributor for year one, but could be a guy that can play a big role in that secondary down the line. Arizona back on the board. Man. Arizona back again. They go Elijah Jones, cornerback from Boston. This is a guy I've seen kind of rise up a little bit too. Put on an athletic show at the combine, and that I think probably helped out his draft stock and can really help in man coverage. So they go back to the secondary once again, and they take a big corner in Elijah Jones, and probably will be a guy that contribute on special teams. So next up, the Packers again. They take another linebacker. And I don't know what the taking 2 linebackers here, but they go to Mizzou and take Tyron Hopper. And I don't know about taking 2 linebackers here, but we'll have to see how that goes. Maybe that his pro day was the difference in landing him here in round 3. He has some pass rush potential, so maybe that's why. And maybe that can help out the Packers going forward. But yeah, so there's the Packers pick at number 91. That's the last Packers pick right there. Number 92, Jalen McMillan from Washington, the third Washington receiver to going to Tampa. It kind of feels like Tampa was going to need to add a receiver at some point in this draft. Returned from injury later on in the season, has some good hands, has some speed to him, has some juice, and can really help out in this Buccaneers receiver room. Matt, how do you feel about McMillan to the Bucks?
I think that's okay. I'm not a huge Jalen McMillan guy. I think that him being the third receiver in Tampa, it's actually kind of interesting because it's a role he's very comfortable in, right? Like you see a lot of these guys. I think it's kind of an understated thing where you spent your entire life being the best player on your team, right? And all of a sudden now you go into a role player situation and you just don't know what to do. You don't know how to operate like that. And
Yeah.
he has lived in that scenario though, being behind Rome, there in Washington and being behind Polk. And he's used to being a third receiver on a team. Look, for fantasy purposes, yeah, it's not going to mean much of anything. I think for NFL purposes, he could slot in pretty good as a nice little role play there, though. and bringing elements to this Tampa Bay offense we haven't seen since Antonio Brown. And so that could be kind of exciting if they open things up a little bit more there in Tampa. One thing I did want to mention, Ryan, and I forgot to mention all the way back with Matt Corley, but I think it's pretty viable here with McMillan as well. Do you think we saw anybody get pushed up tonight because of the new kickoff rules?
Maybe so. I saw something with Trey Benson maybe adding something to the return game potentially with his speed and playmaking ability. And, that's something to keep in mind. Some guys might go higher because of that ability that they can have in the kickoff game with these new rules. That's something I didn't think about till you brought it up, and I feel like that could be a factor here, maybe with McMillan especially,
Yeah.
in contributing to that kickoff return.
Yeah, that I think round 3 is kind of the spot where you can see guys start to get pushed up for their role in that.
All right, let's go and let's talk about your Ravens here. This pick actually was happening early on in our round 3 discussion, and that is Adisa Isaac from Penn State going to the Ravens here. Another Penn State pass rusher here, a guy that also kind of rose a little bit quickly and felt like we talked about earlier, a very Ravens esque type of pick here with Isaac.
Yeah, ESPN had him projected to go 77th, and the Ravens could take him at 93. It fills a need at pass rusher. With Jabo and Owe just kind of having been nothings really so far. This team had to rely on Kyle Van Noy and Jadeveon Clowney, and Van Noy's coming back, but at that age, you don't want to count on him repeating what he just did, and Clowney's gone. So you definitely need to fill that role. The Ravens have a pretty good history with taking pass rushers. I kind of joked about earlier, but like taking pass rushers in rounds 3, 4, 5. And yeah, rookie year, you get nothing. But then by the end of their career, by the time they're ready to hit free agency, though, they have this breakout year, right? It seems to happen every single time for the Ravens. So that's kind of what I'm penciling him in for, is a breakout in 2020. What would that be? 2027, I guess. He can have a big year there, and then he can go cash in somewhere else. He can be the next Zadarius Smith. He can be, Justin Matabike just did this, but he re-signed and stayed, right? There's been a whole litany of these guys over the last 10 years, right? Chris Wormley, he was another one. Tyus Bowser was kind of one of those guys. Judon, he was kind of an extreme version of that, where Judon didn't do a ton his first couple of years, and then came on the scene big. Like I mentioned, Zadarius Smith, he was definitely one of those guys. Brent Urban, he kind of falls into that. Gosh, that's 2014 I'm down to now. So you get my point, I think, where the Ravens have definitely been able to find these kinds of guys in rounds 3 and 4 and 5. Pernell McPhee, there's one more for you.
Yeah, that's another one. And hey, there's nothing wrong beating Zadarius Smith either. He's made
Of course
a nice career out of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. It just when these guys are in round 3, it takes a couple years. We really need to not talk about round 3 players as if they're immediate contributors. Like, a lot of times they're not. A lot of times it takes a year or 2 years for these guys to really become contributors. They can be rotational players in year 1. Hopefully they are. But yeah, I like that. That's my expectation for him, though. Is kind of a rotational player this year, a bit more next year, and then a year 3 breakout.
Yeah. So next up, we got another pass rusher going off the board in Jalix Hunt from Houston Christian University. Eagles taking him. Brandon Graham isn't going to be around forever. You just signed Bryce Huff. You hope Nolan Smith can contribute in year 2 more so than he did in year 1. But is a guy that has some intriguing skill, is raw as a pass rusher, has some excellent athleticism. And so he rose here to the 3rd round at pick number 94 and can be developed here. And hey, I mean, if you learn from Brandon Graham, that can go a long way in your development too. And I think you hope for that for Nolan Smith too. But
that's a pretty good start.
I mean, you could do worse than having Brandon Graham, kind of help you learn the ropes of being an NFL edge rusher, for sure. Next up, we got the Bills taking Dwayne Carter from Duke, the draft, and is a guy that is a scheme disruptor, uh, has a ferocious style. And so, if you're Buffalo, you like adding that to your defense. I know Sean McDermott probably does, adding that type of guy to your front line. And there you go with the Bills and adding another defender here. Honestly, I felt like they could have gone corner here, but maybe they didn't like the corners on the board. It feels like corner is going to be something they have to attack on day 3 and getting some guys in there because you lost your Davis White. You got some holes there. So I feel like that's something they need to look at
Yeah,
for day 3.
For sure. I am totally with you on that for sure with them. But man, this whole defense, it really was kind of the whole defense for Buffalo that has me aged out and concerned for them. And that's why I like the trade out they did, in round 1.
Yeah, because it got them more picks and you get more cost controlled rookie contracts and you can add them to that defense. And you're paying Josh Allen a boatload of money, so
Yeah.
get some cost control talent on that defense with all these picks. So next up, we got the Jaguars here at number 96, taking Jarian Jones, the next corner out of Florida State. And, a guy that I feel like the Jaguars need to add a corner. Campbell on the last year of his rookie deal. Ronald Darby's only on a 1-year deal. And so they take Jones here in the 3rd round. 6 foot, ran a 4.3, 840. That had to help his stock outside a little bit. Can play inside and outside. Might be a nickel corner in the NFL, but for the Jaguars, you need a corner help any way you can get with those guys and considering the future of that position. So Jaguars go corner there at number 96. Next up, the Bengals. They go defensive tackle again and really start to build up some depth there and get McKinley Jackson from Texas A&M and pair him alongside Chris Jenkins. More of a 2-down player, might be more of a nose tackle type of mold there for Jackson. So he might not offer much upside as a pass rusher, but for those those rushing downs will play a big factor here. And so you get that value in round 3, and you get a guy that played in the SEC for 3 years. I think you take that. Next up, the Steelers are back up at pick number 98, and they take Peyton Wilson. And I saw linebacker as a need for the Steelers, and they get Wilson here, who fell probably because of his health concerns. He had a lot of them. A guy that was a top 40, top 50 kind of prospect. And the Steelers, I think they good value here at number 98, and they can just, plug and play him at linebacker. And the health concerns, they are real. So he might not have a long career, but if you're the Steelers, you try to get the most out of him. And he could be a good linebacker for Pittsburgh for a long time, for a few seasons, and we'll have to see how it goes. But yeah, I think there's good value here for the Steelers at 98.
Yeah, he's the guy who I saw in round 1 quite a bit, in round 2 every time he wasn't round 1. So it was definitely a medical situation here. And we've seen that pan out really well for some players where they end up being a real steal for the team when they do fall because of medicals. And then there's unfortunately other times when the medicals do creep back in. So it's a bit of a risk reward situation in round 3, though I don't mind taking that kind of a risk.
Yeah, exactly. And final 2 picks here. And we do have one more skill position player to talk about before we wrap up for the night. Cameron Kinchens, 99, goes to Miami and goes to the LA Rams. The Rams getting some safety help for them. And I feel like they could use some secondary help, whether it's at corner, or whether it's at safety. And so they add him with pick number 99 and add them to that young group of defenders that they have. And then finally, with pick number 100, the final pick that we're going to talk about, Matt, we are going to talk about McCaffrey here with the final pick of round 3, going to Washington. Of course, another McCaffrey entering the league. Going to Washington too, getting Jaden Daniels, a McCaffrey to play with as a wide receiver, get to throw to him.
Yeah, LMC doesn't quite flow as solid as CMC. But no, he seems like he's a pretty good third option, right? Like you've got Jahan Dotson, and he's kind of a mystery box at this point. We don't really know what he is, but you know what Taylor McLaurin is? He's really, really good. Jane Daniels, so get him a third weapon here, and I don't love McCaffrey. I think he is a good. He's a poor man's Ricky Pearsall before Ricky Pearsall's price skyrocketed last night. But that's kind of the archetype I see him in, though. He's got good feet, good route runner, good hands as well. He can do a little bit of everything for you. He's not a real physical receiver, though. But he can. He's not afraid to take a hit, though, for sure. I think that I'm a little floored that my guy Troy Franklin is still on the board as we go into round 4. I definitely prefer Franklin over McCaffrey. But hey, what do I know, though? I'm just a guy on a couch with a runny nose, right? So I don't get to I don't make these choices.
Yeah, I guess before we get out of here, I'm looking at the best available for round 3 or round 4 or day 3. You got TJ Tampa, Cedric Gray, the linebacker from North Carolina, Jaden Hicks, safety from Washington State, Jatavian Sanders is still on the board, Kate Stover, Troy Franklin, as Matt mentioned, still on the board, Brandon Dorless, Brendan Rice, Jerry's son, still on the board, Tez Walker, Jalen Wright is still on the board, Malik Washington, Matt, one of your guys, Spencer Rattler is still on the board, waiting to be taken by somebody. So a lot of guys here, I think you can see going here or fly off the board here in round 4, starting early tomorrow.
Yeah, Spencer Rattler, I'm disappointed. The dream is dead to me now. I kind of have a very much a thing against quarterbacks after round 2. I think it's just kind of a waste of time for a lot of teams versus you can take a, like we just said, a rotational player, right? A guy who can actually get in the lineup versus a quarterback who won't. So unfortunately for Rattler, I guess I gotta just let it go. But I don't know. I thought there were tools there. I guess I was the only one who thought that. Running back is like the position to watch, though, right? Like you've got Jalen Wright,
Yes.
Ray Davis, Braden Allen, Isaiah Guerrero, Bucky Irving, Audric Estime, Will Shipley, Tyrone Tracy is a player who I like quite a bit. Kamani Vidal also. It's like these guys are all going to be Dejuan Edwards, Cody Schrader, MIZ. There's a ton of running backs who, if they fall in the right places and get the right chances, they can be a little something. Wide receiver, like I said, my guy Troy Franklin. I'm not a big Brendan Rice guy. I like Tez Walker. I like Javon Baker. Johnny Wilson's fun because he's massive. He's freaking huge. And Jamari Thrash, that's one last player I kind of want to give a little bit of a shout out here to keep an eye out for on day 3. And of course, also SEMO, Ryan Flournoy from the Red Hawks, of course. He is hopefully going to be a day 3 pick.
Yeah, we'll have to see about that. But yeah, it's just a lot of great talent at that running back spot. And we talked about it before, but like you said, it's going to depend on where these guys go and see what situation they're in. I imagine one of these guys is going to end up in a Cowboys jersey by tomorrow.
Yeah.
Hopefully, probably Cowboys fans crossing their fingers. Give us somebody, please. Yeah, just a lot of good talent. And I'm sure we'll start to see these guys fly off the board. And I think, let me see, the Panthers got the first pick. I think my times are pretty early up on day 3 tomorrow, and we'll have to see what they do with pick 4, their third pick. Maybe they'll take a kicker. I mean, listen, I knock it, but I mean, I would like a good kicker that's not Nick Folk, that's old as dirt.
Look, if you're not going to score touchdowns, maybe you can at least score field goals.
That's true. That's true. Maybe we can get Brandon Aubrey or somebody like him,
Exactly.
We'll have to see. But yeah, everybody, day 3. We'll be posting these on day 3. So we'll see when these guys go off the board here. So yeah, that'll do it for us here. And after day 3 is done and over with, we will try to get back sometime next week and try to talk about the draft in full, talk about some of our favorite teams and see what they did, talk about teams we liked what they did with the draft and all that good stuff. So, Matt, I'm sure you got some stuff for the ADP cooking on that end as well.
Oh yeah. Tomorrow the gang is back together. Tanner Ward, he's gonna hop on with me, and me and him are gonna talk
Hey,
about pretty much just everything that happened. I've already got up on the at Average Dudes podcast on YouTube. I put up videos all night last night, just kind of quick reactions to all the fantasy players as they got picked. I think tomorrow I'm gonna try to go ahead and do a similar thing for all the players from today and catch up on all the ones tomorrow. Just kind of quick 3 to 5 minute snippets, just kind of, hey, here's this player, here's what I thought of them going there, right? It's not anything too deep yet in that regard, just kind of a quick reaction while we still try to let this all settle in our brains and kind of really sort through some stuff. And so, yeah, of course, we're going to be going through Dynasty rookie rankings for sure. That's going to be a big thing here for the next few weeks. And, veteran winners and losers, right? Like, Keenan Allen, how do we feel about Keenan Allen and DJ Moore now with Robo Dunze being there, right? Christian Kirk, what do we do with him now? Kyron Williams after tonight with Blake Corum joining him. So there's gonna be all sorts of those kind of veteran questions we got to sort through too. More looking at it from a dynasty perspective this time of year, but then we'll quickly flip that switch and head into redraft mode.
Yeah, everybody. So if you want to go check out ADP, go check that out. Lots of stuff coming out on the pipeline there. So check them out. Check us out where you guys get your podcasts. Be sure to go subscribe, do all that podcast stuff. Check us out on YouTube, 573 Podcasts, and we'll have some post-draft stuff later on both those platforms. So, yeah, everybody, that'll do it for us here tonight. Thank you guys for hanging out with us as we talk about what happened on day 2, and we'll be back and talking about post-draft stuff and talk about the teams and what they did, our favorite teams, and some of our favorite picks and all that good stuff. So till then, everybody, have a good weekend, and we will talk to you all next time.